Hello and welcome to Intuitive Clarifications with Natasha. And I'm hoping Regan shows up soon so we can do the show. And, it's one of those things that happens sometimes. We all get busy and doing things. And oh boy, what a day today was. I know that I was riding a ride today and I was even a little prickly today. I didn't mean to be to people, but it's one of those things. Today was one of those days that, we had a breakthroughs on a lot of insights. And I know that for me, I did have some insights. So I'm Natasha Venter. I'm an intuitive medium who loves to support you in your life's journey. And as we're going forward and doing your thing and doing our life, right now, we're coming into a lot of energies. And Regan and I today we're going to talk about how are we programmed? How are we programmed? Well, I'm going to talk about that too if Regan's not here and if he is. So, it's one of those things that, as we go forward and as we negotiate our time together, that life is so amazingly gifted to teach us things. So, if you are struggling with a lot of things right now, time, self-patience, self-knowing, life happening, seems like one thing's on top of another, things keep happening, and it's time for us all to really breathe through the moment, right? Breathe through that as we go forward. And I know for me that I was trying to take some time to breathe through my day. When I had a moment, I just did it. And, I don't know if everybody else is kind of going through some things, but, for me, I was eating something and all of a sudden my gut bacterium got off, right? My digestive systems got off. And so I started getting heartburn. And so I thought, okay, I'm just going to start fasting a little bit and eating the cooler things. Some people like to take anti-acid pills, but I understand that if you're getting heartburn, there's not enough acid in your gut. I know that's kind of hard to believe because there's not enough to digest what's going on. And I know that I ate something that my body kind of is like, not too sure about right now. And so I ran out of my digestive enzymes. So it's time for me to order my digestive enzymes to get that bacterium back going again. So if you're feeling a little off, if you're feeling a little bit, so remembering that sometimes when we feel like we have too much of something, sometimes it's not enough of something. So if we have too much outgoing, right, that outgoingness, the anger, the frustration, and all that kind of stuff, we don't have enough time to ourselves to do what we need to do. And so as you're going forward and negotiating a lot of this, that, it's amazing how we are going through life right now. And, Regan hasn't gotten back to me yet. So I don't know where he is, but, life keeps grabbing him. So I'm hoping that, it's like he'll get back to me soon. So I'm going to talk a lot about today, and I'm hoping that Regan can come in, that how are we programmed? Well, I was just a little bit talking about that. How are we programmed? Well, sometimes we're programmed into writing the energies that we have right now. Sometimes we're programmed into negotiating some of our stories. Sometimes we're programmed into being less than. There was a time when, and I still kind of come around with this a little bit, that, it's like my dyslexia actually told me that I was less than other people. Okay. I was less than other people. And that's not a truth. So when something happened to me when I was traveling in another country, and my hair's driving me a little bit nutsy right now. So I'm going to do something right here. And, my clip just broke. That's the kind of day I'm having, right? It's like things are happening left and right. And what are we going to do about it? So going into this, that, it's like when I was in Spain, and something happened where, roommate type of thing, and she needed to do what she needed to do. She had her boundaries. I had mine. That, it's like, I really got the mantra, how I perceive myself is how other people perceive me. And that's a thing that you can work with when you're being programmed about being more not in alignment with other people, right? You're not necessarily always in the availability to negotiate what we're doing and where we're at. So in our stories and in our interactions and in the way we're doing things, that remembering that a lot of our programming comes from a lot of our younger years. Those younger years are something that really kind of hinder us a little bit with our story. There's so many times I see this in a lot of my sessions that I do, that that somebody might say, hey, I'm just feeling less than right now. Well, I see a young kid sitting in a front room while the other people are sitting in the back room, in the kitchen or something like that, talking. And we get the osmosis, or that energy osmosis, from the people around us, right? And, you know, and it's not good or bad or anything like that, but we get a lot of things from the outer world, especially when we're younger and we're hearing things. And we are hearing things like as a 3-year-old, when adults are talking in adult conversations, and we get our little knowings during that time. Does that really make sense? So we set a lot of our life story, our life aspirations, a lot of our life things by what we hear when we're 1, 2, 3, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. And we take a lifetime trying to debunk it or work through it or, negotiate it. Right? So coming into what our story is and who we are, that, it isn't necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just, how do you negotiate it as you become more of an adult? How do you become more yourself as you become more of an adult? And, it's not good or bad. It's just what it is. And who are we and what are we doing is going to be a negotiation. And if you're listening here, I put on a little click thing that they're starting to do now here on StreamYard, is that, you can see comments as they come on. And I'm going to do that as long as, just going to play with it today and see how that goes, because I think it's kind of interesting to have the comments, because I usually could click on them and they would come on. But I just wanted people who are listening today that, if you don't want a comment to be done, just let me, I'm going to click it off. I'm going to click it off because I don't want people's privacies to come on here. So, it's one of those things that, sometimes somebody might say something that's a little more private and I want to give them privacy. So minus out what I just said. Okay. So as we come into who we are and what we're doing, it's really time for us to honor who we are today. We don't have the same truths that they did back when we were kids, right? And if you're listening to this, you're usually a little older. And so, but a lot of our things that, we're programmed to is because of our young years. And I'm sorry again that Regan's not here. I was hoping he would come, but I'm hoping that I'm praying that there's not an emergency. I haven't tapped in because I don't want to go there right now. Pretty, like my husband said, you're kind of scattered today. And I go, yeah, I kind of am. The energies are kind of scattered. So I'm not going to be doing that. So if you are feeling like you want to go through some new energies and you want to find your own truth, really think about, if you can, how were you discussed and how was it discussed for you when you were younger? A lot of our religious beliefs are from when we were younger. A lot of our political beliefs are from when we were younger. I know for me, it's the same way. My parents were pretty easygoing, pretty open to what they believe in, went to non-dominatory churches. I went to a Catholic church, yes. For school, I went to a Catholic school just because it was in the neighborhood and they didn't want me to be bused. So that was more the reason than it was because I needed to go to a Catholic school. I wasn't necessarily Catholic. But the thing is, though, a lot of my dad's beliefs came from that. And I know for me that a lot of my background of Jesus and Mother Mary were from those years. Yes. but I know them now. So that was how I integrated it in. I integrated in the new knowings, layered on the new truth. Because of the fact that if we can, with those new truths, we can layer on our old belief system. I have a friend, and she probably wouldn't mind me talking about her a little bit, but she's from, she's in her 70s, almost 80, that, she came from the Bible Belt, down in, the Carolinas and that area. And, she, and then, she was was brought up Baptist, and, and she knew that that wasn't her truth that she was coming up, but, it did set into her somehow, right? Those understandings. And then her being an only child, and then her parents being a little bit more, the Bible-ish type of people, that she was always kind of the black sheep of the family. She was always trying to do right by her family. She was always, and so even today, I have been helping her get self-confidence. I have been helping her, and other people too, but, she's very bold in what she does. But then at the same time, there's a side of her that's like not very bold. She trying to, hi there, Veronica, thank you for being here. Trying to negotiate a lot of who she is and what she's doing. And, it's a moment. And so if we're programmed by a lot of different things, and I'm going to make a segue here. Regan hasn't gotten a hold of me, so I don't know if something happened to him. I sent him an email yesterday. So, I don't know what's happening with him, but I'm sure that he feels okay. Just kind of got a little discombobulated, being maybe forgot it was Wednesday, because time's changing. Imagine that. Time is changing, and we're all trying to work with what we're at and work with what we're doing. So if you are feeling like you're trying to find some new truths right now, think about, where do some of your belief systems come from now? Now's the time to really look at, where do your belief systems come from? Do they come from something that you grew up with? Did they come into you through a lot of our TV? Like there's some TV show, like and this is going to age me, but when they had that conjunction junction, what's your function? Right. And to this day, that helped me with my ands and thes and ors and that kind of stuff. And, it is a moment where, we have these, things that just kind of, if you keep watching it, you're going to believe it. That's why they keep doing things like the certain, commercials on TV. That's why they do certain, ads. Now it's like, oh my gosh, the ads, the ads, the ads, the ads. It's like Pandora now. I don't want to pay for Prime Pandora. I want the free. But now, since I had ad blocker on my computer, they're not wanting me to, they won't play Pandora because I have ad blocker on. Now I have a bunch of ads every other song or every song, right? And it's just, these things are just bombarding us about things. And that's just the that sub, conscious understanding that they're doing for us, right? That subconscious understanding is negotiating a lot of what we're doing. And it's really time for us to negotiate honoring who we are and the new belief system that we have, because time is not the same. And my hair is really driving me crazy today. It's like, when you're a little bit agitated, I'm just gonna say it, when you're agitated, guess what? Things are going to bug you. I'm a little agitated today. Imagine that. I took some extra vitamin B's today. My husband actually saw the other side of me today, and it was kind of funny to watch him. Because he's used to me being centered and used to me being fine. And it's like trying to find certain things. And it's just like, yeah, it's a moment today. It's a moment today. But that's where we're at. We're really getting stirred up to find our own truth. We're really going forward in who we are and what we're doing, to find that understanding of ourselves. So, like I was saying, everything stems from something. Everything stems from something. there's a lot of patterns that we have, a lot of the way we have arguments, the way we have these negotiations actually come from a lot of those years. I'm not a fighter. Well, I never grew up in a house that was fighting, where my husband kind of did. And so, fighting for him is a little more easier to negotiate than me, right? And sometimes we are growing up in, let's say, a household that's fighting, and we don't want to be that way. And so, but then it's funny how life kind of mirrors us back a little bit. So if you come up in a family where nobody really likes themselves, right? Or they come into a family that is, doesn't say I love yous, or you come into a family that is really feeling agitated about who they are and what they're doing. Like their work ethic is so high that they can't even ever feel successful. And, I learned the other day that, telling my husband that he was successful, that was almost like telling him that he was stupid, because he was, he just can't reach that successful moment in himself yet. Life is an evolution, right? Life is an evolution. Life is a walk. Life is an understanding. And, it's a moment where how can we honor and love ourselves through these new updates we're going through? Did you get a new update on your phone? I sure did. Not liking it, getting some things back to the way I like it. Other things, they're just going to be what they are going to be, and I'm going to have to negotiate it. So when you are in the process of figuring out whose truth am I really speaking, whose truth is part of my dance, whose truth am I negotiating with, whose truth is speaking through me now? Well, I can tell that a lot of my truths are my dad's. A lot of my truths are my dad's. Because the way he negotiated, the way he conversated, the way he told me how he came to his truths. He was very understanding about how he came to his truths. And that's why I kind of understand it more and more. It's because I'm willing to ask the question, whose truth is this? And then listening to that language, that intuitive language that you hear, right? So it's not necessarily wrong or right if you believe something. That's up to you. Your truth is your truth. It's about finding what is your truth that really works for you, what resonates, what really truly resonates for you in that understanding. We're all in the moment of really getting stirred up. Oh my gosh, really getting stirred up. The planets are in retrograde right now. Pluto's in retrograde right now. Oh, right? It's the year of the snake. Oh my gosh, you know what? I have said, I don't know how many different times, that I am tired of the snake biting me this year. It's come out of my mouth. I'm tired of the snake biting me. My kindness is not weakness. Okay? My kindness is not weakness. But my kindness is getting snake bit sometimes lately. I'm going to try to ride it as much as I can by saying, you know what? I have boundaries, and my kindness can be held out for people who can appreciate it. Because the reason why we get all these different truths and understandings is because we believe that those truths are the pure truths. Now, we kind of come through our younger years, and then we come into our teenage years, and our teenage years are about struggling and pushing a lot of different truths, right? Those struggle and pushes. So that's another place where we can get a lot of our truths from, is by our teenage years, in those early 20 years. Me with the guys that I was dating at the time that I was, I was really getting some truths about how I wasn't valued for what I was giving. I wasn't valued for what I was giving. And so going into this, that, you know, setting up that truth during that time, I've almost had to reprogram myself to say that I'm valued no matter what. I am valued no matter who I am and what I'm doing. It's a thing. It's a thing, right? So, who are you and what are you doing? I'm hoping this is making sense because, you know, we get into these relationships. Oh, talk about relationships. Oh, I knew I was going to segue into this. You know, if you're married to a narcissistic man or woman or being, or you have a narcissistic parent, whose truth are you really listening to? Usually, these people who like, you know, bosses or coworkers or whatever they are, you know, they can really have these narcissistic tendencies. And if you have these narcissistic tendencies, you start getting underneath their wing as a bird that goes, right? You can start getting underneath some different understandings. You start losing yourself. You know, your friends start going away because of life happening. And if your friends start going away, then you have these moments where you don't have anything to buffer from. And I know that some of us, like for me, I didn't grow up with a lot of friends in my life. This is the most friends I've had, and co-friends and deep friends that I've had since I was, my whole life, actually, not even since I was young, because I didn't have many friends when I was young. You know, and so, you know, having these friendships have been the world to me. Thank you, Veronica. Because, you know, without them, I wouldn't be me. And I've had to, and through the stretch and pull of some of these conversations, you know, Chandra, when you are listening to this later, thank you. You are a gift too. That, you know, it's a moment of really believing in who we are. And I'm grateful for my friends because they actually are a good buffer for me to understand that I'm not the reality that I am around me. And there was someone who I met up with today, and I have love for this person. She's come to me for a session. She used to work with me. She moved schools, and now she's having to move homes. And it was just interesting how the universe synced me up to talk with her. I was wanting to talk with somebody else today, while she was going on her lunch, but I ended up talking with this person. And, you know, she's going through a life-altering moment right now where she's having to move. She's had, you know, things are happening, and she keeps telling herself, this is going to be the best thing I've ever done. I'm moving in with the neighbor's house. They have a room for me, and, you know, and this is the most love I've felt in a very long time. Ain't that a miracle? Isn't that a miracle that she had somebody who can negotiate oh, he says he doesn't have a link. Okay, so I will resend it to, where is it at? Oh, this is the day it's been. Where's it at? Sent items. Regan. Copy to Regan Forston. Paste. Send. Okay. Sent again. So Regan will be coming up to me. So sorry about that. There we go. So you know, it is a moment where, you know, where we have the ability to negotiate ourselves if we really look into how are we talking about ourselves? How are we interacting with ourselves? How are we talking about these things about us? Because, our parents can do this to us. Like I said earlier, our moments can do this to us. So if you are in the middle of redefining your truth, and I can tell you that most everybody is. And like I was saying, that this friend of mine that I talked to today, she's like really thinking, this is going to be the best thing for me. Because I'm getting out of a lot of these understandings. I'm getting out of a lot of these negative stuff that's pelting us, right? And so she's like thinking that, actually it's been strange that now I'm feeling the love that I am. And that's the thing, is that sometimes these changes can really bring in a lot more love for ourselves and for others. And it's not easy and it's not bad. It's just what is, right? And here comes Regan. Yay, Regan, you're here finally. And it's okay that you're a little bit late, my dear friend. I understand life happens and then we do it. Today's been one of those days that I've been just like all over the place. And I was saying that, and, it seems like today's one of those days. So are you ready? Are you ready? Okay. There you are. Hello, my friend.
Now can you hear me?
Yep, I can.
Yeah, I don't know if it's me or you, but you're frozen.
Oh, am I? Okay. There we go.
There. Now I see it. Yeah, you were frozen for a minute there.
Oh, okay. Maybe it was because you were coming in and that kind of stuff. So, well, hello, my friend, and are you having a day like again. I'm having?
I'm gonna. How about I'm gonna go out and come back in again.
Okay.
Yeah, let me do that quick.
Yeah, good job. Okay, so we're in the middle of doing things like this, right? Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I appreciate you so much. This is part of this energies. This is part of the energy that we're coming in. And right now, I'm going to say that Mercury right now is really having a lot of fun in our energy. So if you feel like Mercury is in retrograde right now, well, it's playing pretty havoc with a lot of things. And so, it's a moment. It's a moment. Hello, sir.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh. I can hear you.
Yep. Sorry, people, if they're hearing me out there. Yeah, it's like I could hear you just fine when I wasn't in the show. And as soon as you add me to the show, then you're I'm not really. You're all not moving around, just stuck.
Huh. So, Veronica, I know you're here. Can you tell me if it's me that's coming across weird, or if it's just a thing? So, we'll just negotiate it the better we can. Okay.
Oh, okay. Now you're fine.
Okay. Yay.
I think.
So talking about programming.
So what y'all talking about? Oh, wow.
I can see you both. I can see you both, and you can hear us both, right, Veronica?
Oh.
No. She said she can see. She can see. No, she says she can see us and everything, and hear you. Yes, and hear you. So she can hear us. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So welcome. So I was just talking about being programmed and how we're being programmed, and it's and I was saying that it's like a lot of programming comes from when we're children, and actually it just came to me, and how our soul is even programmed from different lifetimes. What's going on?
I'm only hearing half of what you say.
Oh no.
This is crazy. But I'm seeing two of me here. I wonder when I came back in if I wasn't. Hold on a minute. I'm gonna.
Did I say Mercury was almost feeling like it was in retrograde? Yeah. Okay, so Regan's going to pop back in. Whew, thank you for everybody for your patience and love and understanding. And there we go. There we go.
There we go. Talk about programming, right?
Yes. Yes.
Wow.
So, how are you feeling like things, how are you feeling like we are programmed?
You're talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, what I've come to understand my programming, which I didn't know until I became more aware of myself and became more present with myself, I didn't realize how most of me until a certain age, most of everything I said wasn't me talking. It was my parents talking. It was my
Mm-hmm.
teachers talking. It was my, whoever brought me up that put these ideas in my head about what's right and wrong and what the right religion is, what the right everything is, what people should you be prejudiced against, and what people should, and as I got older and I started, becoming spiritual in a sense and realized, wow, when I'm speaking, is that really me talking? And I realized, no, that's not me. That's not really what I believe, but I'm just like a robot, been programmed, So I think we spend a lot of our adult life unprogramming ourselves and installing the programs that really are what we believe,
Mm-hmm.
But um, in this spiritual work, you and I both find that people that come to us, uh, the way they're programmed, they're a little bit scared that what you and I do is like something from the devil, or,
Mm-hmm.
or what we're doing is, it's not scientific. It's, whatever. Um, and so, we have to spend some time with them to reassure them that what they're experiencing now is unprogramming themselves to start getting what's real instead of what other people have told us to believe,
Mm-hmm.
But we're constantly being programmed by commercials,
That's what I
trying to
was
influence
saying,
us.
that a lot of like the conjunction junction, what's your function?
Yeah.
Still runs through my head to this day, even though I haven't seen it for years, right? Remember that conjunction, what's your function?
Well, you're frozen again.
Oh, geez.
There we go. So yeah, we're constantly, everybody's trying to program us to believe or sell us what they want to sell us, that, program us that that's what we need. So you have to constantly have your wall up to say, wow, wait a minute, everything coming in, you have to either toss it or go, okay, I believe that,
Mm-hmm.
but it's hard because that program, see, what I learned in hypnotherapy school, the way the brain works, and I really believe this is true. Before you're about 8 or 9 years old, before you can actually reason for yourself, they call it, before the age of reason.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody who's a caregiver of you or someone you look up to as an authority, when they tell you something, it just goes in your computer as truth. You don't question it at all. It's just goes in there. Um, and then once you reach the age of reason, then you don't start believing everything your parents tell you, or you start questioning a little bit. But to unprogram that stuff from 0 to 8 years old, it's in there like cement,
Mm-hmm.
and it takes a while to get rid of all that stuff. So what's
Well,
some technique?
and this is what I say to people. It's almost like we come into this world with a good stew. We have a great stew. It's flavored well. We know what we want to do. We know what we're going to be. We're here to do it. And then all of a sudden, dad speaks, grandma speaks, brother or sister speaks, TV speaks, minister speaks, priest speak. It's like whoever, friends speak. And we have, by the time we get to age 10, it's like we're trying to eat our stew and it doesn't taste anything like we wanted it.
Yeah.
Right. And then we spend the rest of our life trying to fix it.
Yeah. And sometimes people think I'm bad mouthing the people that programmed me, but most of them were good, where they were doing the best they could do and programming me what was programmed to them, so they were, I would say, well-meaning people. They weren't trying to control us or whatever. Especially the thing about religion, you grow up Catholic, uh, um, and that's all you see and do. And then you have kids. And so what do? You teach them because you love them. You want them to learn and know the same things that you thought was good for yourself.
Exactly.
So us good meaning people, and even us in the spiritual part here, I mean, we think we're programming our kids in a better way, but who knows if, and maybe they need to be something else, you know. So I think the best programming would be to our children would be to say, this is one way of looking at things, but there are other ways,
Yeah.
so try this on and see if you like it, but feel free, if you find a better way of something, then check it out, to let them know that they're not stuck, or they don't have to believe everything exactly as we say, just saying
Exactly.
this is a place to start,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
No, exactly. And it's all about language, but how do you notice that yourself, because we're on the second half of the show here, how did you find your way to unprogram yourself, to reset up a new truth, to set up some deeper understandings, so that you didn't keep going over the same rabbit hole that your parents taught you to be in, or
Yeah.
or the self-doubts, or a lot of those things? Because I don't know how many families are out there that are saying, you're stupid, why are you thinking that way?
Yeah.
That's part of their daily language.
Yeah. My unprogramming began when I started. Um, it happened with religion, actually. That's what started it, was because when I went to Catholic high school, even, all Catholic, 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 all the way through high school. So when I went to college, that was really the first time I heard about Buddhism, even, and I only knew a little bit about Protestants. All I remember is that when I was in first grade, I was standing in line to do First Communion. Catholics out there, we've all been through the First Communion, where first time we're
Yes.
going to have the host in our mouth. And the little girl in front of me asked the nun, she said to the nun, my friend's Protestant instead of Catholic, and the nun holds her face and looks her right in the face and said, your friend is going to hell, because they are not Catholic, they are not Christian, and so in saying, you are lucky, girl, that you are Catholic, because your
See, and
friends are pagan.
that just saddens me.
Yeah.
That
And so,
saddens me that we think that other religions are wrong.
yeah. And and a lot of religions are still that way now, you know, it's just, you get to look at it this way, and anything beyond that, you're going to burn in hell, or it's not
Mm-hmm.
right, so it's changed somewhat, because the world, I mean, now you can say Buddhism, people don't, they kind of understand a little bit about it. Uh, People that go to yoga now, I mean, it used to be, Catholics or Christians don't go to yoga because that's Buddhism and that's a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. People didn't even go to hypnotists or hypnotherapists because they thought
The devil.
that's the devil.
Yeah.
Acupuncture, oh, that's a totally stupid thing, putting needles here and expect to get better. But
Mm-hmm.
most of those things are part of society now, it's because there's been an awakening in people, knowledge. So what I did was, in college, I said, well, this isn't all adding up now. I'm hearing all these other ways about God. So I took a comparative religion course, and that kind of opened me up a little further. So what I began to do, and this is to really answer your question, was in my mind, I began to say, okay, why don't I just open my mind to look at other things and then decide what's right for myself, and then I would read books and things like that. And some of it I would go, oh, wow, yeah, that kind of fits me. And the other stuff I'd go, no, that's garbage. Now a lot of that stuff that I threw away as garbage when I was in my 20s and 30s is now turned out to be true, and so I wasn't ready to accept that yet. So it's a slow process, isn't it?
It
you know
is. It really is. And that's that part of that, like I was saying, earlier before you came on, about how, we get our truths when we're younger, and then we get them again when we're in our teen years.
Yeah.
right? Because we get so many influences from friends and, hey, try this, you'll be great, and then you find that you have recovery for the next 10 years, right?
Yeah.
And then we have our 20s where we're like really thinking, what family do we want? How do we want? Do I get married? And then, we go into our 30s and there's another layer of those truths coming out. And I
Yeah.
really feel like that, when you're being the age that I am right now, that, our truths really started stirring up around our end of 40s. We
Yes.
started
Yeah.
really, and you could probably concur with this, that our
Yep.
40s were when we really started really thinking about, why do I hold on to this? Why am I holding on to that? Why am I thinking that? Why? We
Yeah.
were willing to ask the whys without feeling like we were going against our family.
Yeah. I had an awakening in my when I was married to Connie with the 4 girls for the 10 years, which was wonderful. We got ourselves into therapy because it was little things like it was time to celebrate Christmas. Well, I'd grown up celebrating Christmas a certain way. And I thought, okay, that's just the way you celebrate Christmas. So here I get married, and here's this woman that's got all these other different things. And I'm thinking it doesn't fit. So the therapist was smart, and he says, Regan, you got a brick wall there about everything has to be a certain way. He says, you need to break that brick wall down and realize that she has just as valid of a way of looking at things as you, and you need to blend, both share your experiences and blend. So we get stuck, we get, when we get into routine, it becomes cement, kind of like, and to break that up, so, I had to learn that, wow, her programming, the way she did Christmas, her programming was different than mine in a simple way. So, you know, that was a
Yeah,
big
and that's
break.
the thing is it's
Yeah.
almost hard to believe that our traditions are programs.
Yeah, they are right. Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
And it's
mhm,
not wrong or right. There's a lot of good programming out there.
yeah.
That's what mantras are for, is to bring in some good programming.
Yeah.
Because that's how I know for me that instead of being in fear and flight, I start telling myself I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe, I'm safe. And
Hmm.
that's something that I'm going to reprogram myself with, is a better mantra than the negative mantra.
Yeah.
you know and so
Hmm.
that's the way our brains really work, is by being programmed. It's a machine. It's a moment, and we think that it's free willed, but it really isn't in a way, and we got
Yeah.
to fill it up, otherwise it goes off running away.
Well, the thing that was so mind-boggling to me at first to understand, but then it was like, what an awakening. When I went to 20 years ago, I went to hypnotherapy school for 2 years and learning how the mind works. And it just blew my mind when I realized that our brains are kind of like computers, are programmed.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a program that's not working, then it's possible to take that program out and put in a better program. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just what you're saying about, we have to watch all the time to be mindful of what our self-talk is to ourselves and go, wait a minute, why did I just tell myself that? That's, I don't, why, because I was programmed to feel a certain way. I know what one client that I had felt guilty because he grew up where you went to church on Sundays and Wednesdays, just religiously. That's what
Mm-hmm.
you had to do to be saved, to be God. So he got married, it was with a person, and she thought that was stupid because she just went once a week, you know. And so he started going once a week, but he still had this guilt all the time. Like, oh my God, maybe I'm missing Wednesday. God's not going to like that. I'm going to be punished. And it took him a long time just to get over that simple thing, just to go to church once a week, because
Mm-hmm.
he grew up doing twice a week, and that was his cemented in there. So the good news is, though, with a little work, you can like take a chisel to that cement and put something in there, and that's why hypnosis kind of softens the cement so it kind of breaks away.
Mm-hmm.
That's the
Exactly.
best way, because you're talking right to the subconscious. Because once you program the subconscious and it gets in a routine, then the subconscious is like, oh great, now we got a routine, I know exactly what to do every day. So don't mess with me, don't change things, because I don't like to be changed, it confuses me. I got it exact now. And when you hypnotize somebody, the best way I explain hypnosis with people is like, right now my conscious mind is here, My subconscious is like across the street, you know, just kind of watching everything. So when someone's telling me something here, it's kind of almost out of earshot, you know, you
Yeah.
can kind of hear a little bit what's going on. When you hypnotize somebody, you slowly see that subconscious walking closer and closer to you. And by the time you're in a hypnotic state, he's side by side with you. And then the
Mm-hmm.
hypnotist can say, okay, gotcha. Now, you know, I know I'm talking to the subconscious, not subconscious. I know you were programmed, you know, to be afraid of this thing anytime it happens. And I know you're trying to keep my clients safe, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and that's a good thing in a way, but you're taking it too far, you know. It's making them paranoid instead of just cautious, you know. So you got to kind of back off a little bit on that, you know, being afraid of this or you know, something. So um, just to show you how the subconscious works, though, it's funny. Maybe I told this one time, but it's such a funny story. A husband, his wife wanted to quit drinking. She would drink like 24 beers a day.
Oh,
Imagine that.
wow.
20 just cans all over the place. And she was alcoholic, you know. She couldn't stop drinking beer all the time. So he wanted to see if she could change her programming. So he came in for like 4 or 5 sessions. It wasn't working. Finally, the therapist says to the hypnotist, he says, look, this isn't working. You know, you either do something or she's not coming to see you anymore. So the therapist, out of frustration, and she's in trance, and he says to her, okay, anytime you put a beer in your hand and you're going to take a sip, you're going to have an incontrollable urge to have to go to the bathroom. Okay. And so, so the husband calls up 2 days later and he says, you got to do something about this. She's sitting on the toilet drinking beer. So he was seeing that it worked. You know, the subconscious heard that and accepted that, you know, and the subconscious is saying, okay, I guess anytime I see with her eyes, she's going to pick up a beer. Okay, I'm going to, you know, it's time to go to the bathroom, you know.
Yeah.
So it was proof that hypnosis works, but it was facilitated in a
In a
frustrated, wrong way.
yeah, he thought that, oh, she's going to have to get up and move without taking the beer. But no, that beer connection.
It just, yeah. So they had to do some more work on that. So, you know, for people that are out there, I mean, hypnosis is an amazing tool. And a lot of people say, you know, like a lot of people come to hypnosis because they have what they call bad habits. In other words, they're biting their nails all the time, or they're pulling their hair. You know, there's certain
Mm-hmm.
things that people do. And hypnosis works really great with helping change those behaviors. You know, and everybody can be hypnotized. I'm told, you know, some people just takes a little more effort than others,
Mm-hmm.
you know, in that way. So let me ask you, Natasha, now some of the things you were programmed with, what did you find yourself doing to unprogram yourself?
So for me, a lot of it was me feeling less than somebody else. You know, because of my dyslexia, I couldn't read, you know, so I wasn't as smart as other people. Right.
Mm.
And then I was very shy and quiet. Can you imagine that? Me being shy and quiet.
No. Nope.
I know, I was at your house. Was I shy and quiet?
No.
I was reserved sometimes, but I
Yeah.
wasn't shy and I wasn't quiet.
Yeah.
But yeah, because I used to be really shy and quiet. Didn't like going into big rooms. I didn't, you know, I took an F one time in school because I was so embarrassed about standing. It was more embarrassing that I sat there in class and went, I'm not standing up in front of anybody and doing the speech. Right. So I got an F for that. So a lot of that was that, you know, I had to tell myself that I was just as good as everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's what I kept saying to myself. I'm just as good as everybody else.
Okay. That was that like your affirmation? Just that?
Yeah. I mean, and I'm all about saying things easy. You know,
Yeah.
it's about easy. I'm just as good as everybody else. I can do it like everybody else. I'm just as important as, you know, how I perceive myself is how other people perceive me. So I want to be perceived as a good person, as
Yeah.
a smart. I don't want to say smart in the sense of smarts, but I know how to negotiate it. I know, you know, I have knowings in me just like everybody else does.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's how I did it a lot. That it's like, you know, even though I didn't love myself during my depression, I still said I love myself. because that's how I rewired that brain part of me, that I had to, even though I was feeling unlovable, I had to say the words I love,
Yeah.
just so that there's a part of me that believes it. So whatever opposite I was sensing, I've learned to do the opposite. So if I'm feeling chaotic, I'm asking for calmness. If I'm feeling disharmonized, I'm about harmonizing. It's like I now in that part where I've practiced enough to know that if there's an unease part of me, try to find ease with it, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's all about the language. It's all about the knowing. It's all about the story. It's all about and sometimes you have to fake it till you believe it.
Well, yeah, and I've told the story before, but I was saying to people now the way your subconscious works too, and that's why there's been mixed reviews on positive affirmations. Some people say, "Oh, you can say things 1,000 times; it's not going to make any difference." But if you say, like, if you want to say, start saying, "I love myself," I'm perfectly imperfect, and I just love myself. You want to say it with feeling because
Hmm.
your subconscious, when it hears you say stuff with feeling, it's more impactful on the
Yes.
subconscious. But the other thing you could
More
do is when you're,
passion.
yeah, more
Hmm.
passionate. But the best thing you could do when you're saying it, if you can, is look in the mirror. So as you're looking in the mirror to yourself, like it's another person there, and you say it, it's more impactful to the subconscious. So it starts chipping away at that, again, chipping away at that cement. So I think with positive affirmations, people just give up too soon. They try
Exactly.
it for 3 or 4 days and they go, well, I'm not, I don't feel any better
You
about
have to
myself.
do the physical action. So like for me, when
Yeah.
I was very shy and quiet and I wanted to start getting myself out there, I would say, "Girl, get out there. Get out there. You can do it. Get out there. Get out
Yeah.
there." Start talking to pick I would try to pick one person in the room and just start heading my way over there and just saying, "Hey, are you having a good day today?" Just
Yes.
find something. And I would have to do the physical action to get myself there. So
Yeah.
if I was feeling less than, I would have to do something like to challenge myself to feel just equal to,
Yeah.
get myself out there so that I'm not sabotaging myself anymore.
Yeah.
Do the opposite of sabotage. You know,
Yeah.
like if I wanted to rewire and rewrote my contracts for my electronics because I would zap electronics all the time
Yeah.
and still do. Actually, I did the other day. And so what I had to do is that I would, if I had anxiety, I would tell myself, Natasha, sit here for another half a minute. Sit here and for another minute. You can do it. You can do it. And I would work through that part of
Excuse
me
me.
in a way, if that makes any sense. Bless
Yeah.
you. That, it's like, so you have to do the physical action to get yourself moving forward. I can
Yeah.
do it. I can do it. I can do it. Well, then do it. You
Yeah.
know, I
So it
believe, I
take,
believe, I believe, then believe. It's
yeah.
like you have to do those interactions. And like you were saying, look in the mirror. I don't know how many times I told when I was depressed about loving my pinky toe, my little toe. But I would look at my little toe and even sometimes rub it, because
Yeah.
thank you. So it was a physical action that I was saying I love you, even though I wasn't looking in the mirror. I
Yeah.
was I was actually interacting with the body part. Like if I say I love you shoulder, I love you shoulder, I love you shoulder, what am I doing? I'm rubbing my shoulder and saying I love you because
Yeah.
that's the physical action to say I love.
Yeah. Well, so, I love that bumper sticker. It says nothing changes unless something changes.
Yes.
So, anything that you want to change is going to take some sort of effort. Now, luckily, some things aren't as hard as others. I mean, when you think about how hard is it for 10 times a day for you to tell yourself that you love yourself? I mean, that's like, would you rather do that or have to dig a 40-foot hole with a spoon? you know I mean, so it's easy to do and you just have to do it. Don't worry about it. When I think was it maybe it was the last time, and I told you about the I love you in the mirror thing, and I knew when my subconscious had finally gotten on board with that, when I was with somebody on a date and I had to use the restroom, and I as I walking in the men's restroom, I look and I see somebody and I go, hey, like it was a friend of mine, and I realized it was me. you know in the mirror. So it's like my subconscious saw someone that I liked because
Mm-hmm.
it was happy to see that person. And I said hi with a big smile, you know. And then I realized, wow, my subconscious saw somebody that I like, and
Uh-huh.
I went, yeah, it's working, you know. And
And that, yeah, because life will show you those things, that things are getting better.
yeah,
You might feel lighter. You might think about not saying certain things as often. You just start noticing that things are just negotiating a little bit better.
yeah, and so on another show too, let's, for part of the show, let's talk about the importance of self-love again too, because the more and more when I have people, because people go into trance and they go to the afterlife in my sessions, and they're before the council answers their questions, and then we say, well, my client has health issues. Do you have a healer, a heavenly healer here that can talk to them about their issues? And when we ask them, why does my client have this issue? A whole bunch of times it's because of a lack of self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's a big one. That's probably the biggest one. You would think it would be for, anger or forgiveness towards others, but a
Yeah.
big chunk of it is they need to learn to love themselves,
Mm-hmm. I know
and
I had
those,
a session the other day, and they just were struggling with headaches and that kind of stuff, and found out that they were doing a job that they didn't want to do for like 30 years.
yeah,
Knees are hurting, bodies hurting, stifled, all these different things. And, and we talked the whole session about how to get moving, how to come back to center, and they talked about, some things that they did as childhood and childhood. And I said, bring that back in your life.
yeah,
Bring that moment back into your life, that you feel home again, that you feel this breath again. And, I'm not going to give more details away, but that's all about self-love.
yeah,
Talk with your emotions, talk with who you are, talk, ask the question, why? Why do I feel this way?
yeah.
And it's okay if you don't hear an answer. Not
Well,
everybody's intuitive enough to hear the answer, but there's something in you that will know an answer in a way to find it.
one of the roadblocks that gets in because our culture about self-love, people were confused that with being conceited. They
Mm-hmm.
say, oh, you think you're so good, that's a whole different thing, being conceited and loving yourself. Okay. Conceited usually it comes from people that have a lot of self-loathing going on, and they have to come out as if they are something greater than whatever be put on a show,
Mm-hmm.
to try to fit in, or to try to make themselves try to feel that they are accepted or something. But we have this whole thing in society, oh, you're a bad person if you're conceited. Well, loving yourself is a different thing than being conceited. So
Mm-hmm.
you need to do that, and it's not that hard to do if you just kind of start somewhere. And I've used that 100, seems like maybe 200 times, when you told me that saying about, I love that I'm perfectly imperfect. And I've sent it to my clients all the time. And when they hear that, they go, oh, yeah, that's the best way.
Uh-huh.
It's like a
Because
relief.
perfectionism, I'm
No,
going to get perfect at this. I'm going to get perfect at who's perfect?
no, no. Even the best basketball player doesn't, what do they make about 45%? If even, well, of course, Seth Curry, when he's just doing free throws, he's like 90 something percent, but he's still not perfect. And he's like the best in all of
Mm-hmm.
basketball, you know. So he's excellent at what he does.
Mm-hmm. I know I was
You
telling
know,
a student the other day who, he's really good at basketball, and he's a
yeah.
sixth grader. And I said, isn't it interesting how when you go in and you make a shot and you think, I got it now, that as soon as you say, I got it now, you usually don't make the next shot.
Hmm.
But that's ego. That's the negative side of ego.
Yeah.
Ego to me is a good friend. I love my
Yeah.
ego. But the negative side of the ego is, that's maybe what we should talk about one of these shows too, is ego.
Yeah. It's a very confusing. It even still is for me, but that would be great. It's just
Yeah, that ego can be your best friend,
yeah.
but you have to have them sit down like a teenager, or a kid. Sometimes
Yeah.
we have to have them. So, as we're going forward, but I pulled a card, and I pulled the stag card.
Hmm.
And the stag card is about pride and leadership and movement. And if you listen to, you see how a male deer,
Yeah.
they're very prideful of who they are.
Yeah.
It's not about ego, but they
No.
know. And that's the thing is that this is the time to understand that we can be wrong, but if we know, there's something in us that it resonates so well that we know that it's good. Now,
Yeah.
remembering though that if you've been brainwashed by a narcissist or captivity or all those different things, we have to be careful of that little weaving of that, right? Because our knowings are a little bit askewed.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so if you can start practicing to find yourself, how can you have this self knowing? And that's when you start getting those knowings that are like, you know what? This feel, those goosebump moments, those
Yeah.
those goosebump moments are part of that. I know. I have a knowing.
Yeah. So in a nutshell, with the programming which we're talking about, the first step is to, I think, for people to a better life, is to really start, as you start saying things over the next few days. If you start saying your opinions to somebody when you're on the phone with somebody or something, as you're saying them, ask yourself, okay, is that really what I think? You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, it's funny because the team that I always root for every year is Notre Dame. Because I grew up in Indianapolis. That's an Indiana team, and my dad was, my family's half Irish, and we're Catholic. So who are
Mm-hmm.
you gonna, when I grew up there, and so that's kind of an innocent programming. I don't need to change that because it reminds me of my dad.
Mm-hmm.
It reminds me of happy times. Rooting for him when I'm in the room with my dad and Notre Dame is winning out there. So that's good programming. But at least I'm conscious of that now, because if I'd grown up in Texas, I'd be doing the same thing with the Longhorns.
Mm-hmm.
Go over there. So some
Exactly. And
programming.
that's, so not, and that's what I was saying about me, like learning about Jesus and Mother Mary, in Catholic schools, right? Because I went to Catholic schools just because
Yeah.
it was easier for me to go instead of being bused everywhere. That I learned my basis of Mother and Jesus. But now I have a relationship with them. I don't
Yeah.
have a I don't have a teaching of them. I have a relationship with them.
Yes.
And that relationship brought some knowings to me.
I
So
love what
find
you
those
just
relationships.
said, and I got to write that down. That is great. I needed to hear that, Natasha. Let me write that down. I don't have a teaching of them. I have a relationship.
Relationship with them.
Okay.
And
Oh, shoot.
that's a key point to this. That when
Yeah.
we have relationships with our understandings, and this is something being downloaded to me too,
Yeah.
relationship with something, we can get into a better knowing with it instead of being at a distance. Oh, this is what I've heard. This is what I know. This is what I've seen. This is what I've been taught. This is what
Yeah.
everything out there is that. But having a relationship with it, you know it differently.
That's such a good way of putting that. Because um, a few people, my in-laws, and that, when I talk about, I've been to heaven three times I've been to heaven and back now. Um, and they say, "Oh, that's the devil." It's just when I've actually had a conversation with Jesus, who channeled through you, and also Jesus channeled through a client of mine, was talking to me about something recently, and
Mm-hmm.
so I feel now that, like you say, it's not a teaching of Jesus. I have a, how to say, I don't have a teaching.
But you have a relationship with them.
I have a
And relationship
relationship.
is a conversations. Relationships are
Yeah,
listening. Relationships are speaking. Relationships are learning that not all perspectives are the same.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
a lot of times, a lot of our relationships with knowings and understandings come from having a stretch and pull conversation.
yeah. And I could, even with my clients that I'm talking about, I can say, well, one thing they could expect in a session now is, instead of having a teaching about them having a guide, that they're going to have a relationship with their guide,
Mm-hmm.
because they're going to meet him face to face, get his name or get her name or its name.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they could have a relationship. And that changes everything. That makes everything more
Palatable.
real,
Yeah. And we can honor it, because,
So
we can have,
waiting for you to unfreeze.
I'm, we can have an understanding of many things, and even our religion, if it sits right with you, it sits right with you. It's not wrong or right. It's what's right for you. And so, understanding that our truths, if it fits right for you and your story,
Yeah.
then that's okay. Like I had my mom's friend, her husband passed away, and her congregation said that the guy that she was going out with, that you couldn't share a house with them unless you got married. Well, she gave up a really good pension because of her congregation, but she believed it. She believed that that was a truth. So be it. So be it. Then if that I didn't agree with it. I didn't agree with it, but she did, and that's okay. It's her happiness. It's her understanding. It's her she went from a not a good marriage for so many years to now she's happier, right? So what's to say that my truth is not her? I need to push my truth on hers. And that's how we get programmed is like, we have to understand that everybody is going to be programmed in a different way. And if they're okay with it, not for me to say.
Yeah.
Not for me to say.
Yeah. Well, in some cases, it takes generations and generations to unprogram people. Well, look at what's going on with Israel. I mean, just as an example, with Israel and the Palestinians right now, it's so ingrained in them because there's been so much hatred thrown around and so much back and forth that the little kids now over there, all this stuff's happening from Israel. They're going to grow up hating the Jews,
Yes.
and the Jews, the kids of the Jews, are going to grow up hating the Palestinians until somebody at some point points out to those children and says, look, okay, there's a better way, there's a way we can love each other and not have to be killing each other all the time,
Exactly. Because
And
I was
takes
watching a video. I was watching a video where somebody was saying, when I was younger, there wasn't separation.
No, there isn't until I like it. There's a great video on, I've seen it several times now on Facebook, and it's a little white boy and a little black boy, and they're like 3 or 4 years old, and they're just having the time of their lives. Just no separation, no anything. It's just until, somebody older says, oh, da 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 da, you go, oh,
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
it's hard to unprogram that, so it just takes, I think what it's taking is the rest of us waking up once we get to a certain percentage, I don't know exactly what it is, but maybe it's 13% or 20%. That's all that it needs to change the whole world, that way, as far as peace and love. And what I understand is that's where we're heading.
Yes.
Right now into this next dimension. It's going to be a lot less for people that are ready for the 5th dimension in a way, and live that way. It's going to be an era coming in of peace and brotherhood and not so much hatred,
Exactly. But I'm gonna do something that's kind of opposite of that right now, because we're almost being programmed to believe that this is going to be the 5th dimension.
Right. As I'm saying that, I'm going, well, all I know is that something's changing for the better.
And you know what? Even if it's just our perception, because we're still going to have to go down the road and deal with people. We're still going to have to negotiate people in the 1st dimension, the 2nd dimension, the 3rd dimension, right?
Yeah.
But how do we perceive that? How do we work with that? How do we align ourselves to be in a more peaceful moment as things are happening? And I know today was a day that I didn't discern myself very good through a lot of different energies. But at the same time, though, I've stuffed my emotions down for a lot of years to help everybody else be better. And now my emotions are starting to have a little bit more speaking, more of a voice.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been enjoyable to have a little bit of, well, if he can have a day or a moment, I can too.
Yeah.
I don't always have to be the calm one in the storm.
Yeah.
So there again is my programming that I had to be the calm in the storm. I don't always have to be the calm in the storm.
Yeah.
I can have a little storm myself,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. That's a good
And I
way.
know Regan and I talk a lot the same language, because we're both nines in the universal law, and it's like,
Yeah.
and we like to be the calm in the storm, but sometimes our storms are just as valid as everybody else's,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So, as a segue, now we've already, now we're an hour and 15 minutes. Regan, thank you for being here. I
Oh
know
yeah.
that,
And I want to.
sometimes these days pop up all of a sudden, and
Well, you know what? Today I had it written down here in my book, and tomorrow they're coming to tent our house for termites. So we had to move out for 2 days. So the whole house is going to be tented. They're going to fumigate. And I didn't realize how much of the work we have to do. We have to take all. I know I'm taking all of everything out of all the cupboards and boxing it up, putting it outside, and then I had to cut all the plants away from the house. I had to cut some trees, so that they could get the
oh,
tent over right.
geez.
And then reading, and there's so much. Some of the things say, get all of your clothes out of the house, and then a few say no, it's gas and you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to do that with your clothes, but something with chemicals, it's like Auschwitz in here. They're going to kill all the darn termites and stuff. And I don't want to come home and have dinner on a plate that's had gas on it, so I'm overdoing it, because I just know 10 years from now they're going to read, oh, we just found out now that this fumigation stuff, it does stick on stuff. So why, it's just extra work. But just imagine emptying all your closets, all your cupboards. We got to take the food in the refrigerator, and it has to be double bagged in these special things where the fumes can't get in. But most of it, I just got a bunch of coolers, and we're going to take that stuff out of the house for 2 days. My son's going to live in my Sprinter van for 2 days here, and we've got a hotel in San Francisco for 2 days. So and then we got to come back, and we got to put all that stuff back in the cupboards and all that stuff back in the house, and just
I
wash.
knew I knew something was busy, so I didn't
Oh,
question
I'd
if you were
lost
going to
track.
show up. You were going to show up. If you weren't, you weren't.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you emailed me there, because when I ran to get my son's helping me with a lot of this. So I ran to get him a hamburger and stuff, and as I was coming back, a client called me and I thought it was somebody else, and I picked it up. Otherwise, I wouldn't have right then, because I was right in the middle of everything. So he has a bunch of issues. So I was sitting there in the car before coming in. The burgers got cold, and then I come in and saw your thing. So anyway, I apologize for the listeners there.
Oh, no, that's okay.
In
That's
here,
okay,
but
my dear friend.
I'm glad that we got to talk, because I always enjoy the time that we have.
Well, next Wednesday, or the next third Wednesday, which will be June.
Yeah.
June already. Time is flying. Time is shifting. So Regan, how can people get a hold of you?
Thank you.
After you're tented and you're getting back in your house again?
Well, I do a lot of sessions on Zoom. I do these what we call life between life sessions with the Newton Institute, and we found a way to have you go deep in trance. 90% of people can do it, and you visit the afterlife. It's like having a near-death experience without a death part. It's done easy, safe, a very structured, scientific way. As we're doing research on that, we've done 70,000 cases now. So it's amazing. You can find out so many things. Anyway, on my website, you can read all about it. Visit theafterlife.com. But I also do regular hypnotherapy on Zoom or in person too for post-traumatic stress, fears, phobias, anxiety, depression, that sort of thing. I've been doing that for almost 20 years now. And we have a lot of things that really work. So you can get a hold of me at visittheafterlife.com. My phone number's in there, emails in there, and everything like that. And Natasha, now with your site that you revamped last year, right?
Yes, I did.
Yeah.
And it's at intuitiveclarifications.com. And I am so grateful to be helping people. I love supporting life in their journey and everything like that. So you can reach me there. I do have time to help you. I've been doing some meditations, which are a lot like the hypnosis type of pattern. And I had one person who said, I did a hypnosis session and all I got was colors. And I was like, cool. Isn't that cool?
That's pretty great when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so she was taking it as a negative, and I was like, no. And then we went in and she saw some things and but then it was interesting how like her colors were representation. They were so sharp and everything. And I'm like going, okay, so that means, you can interpret colors by how they present themselves.
Yeah.
And so it was fun. So I love to bring out the betterment of who everyone is. And I'm so happy to be able to be here and support people and bring light and love to this planet.
Yeah.
So intuitive clarifications. I'm also posting regularly on my social media. I'm off of Facebook. I'm now on Instagram, X, trying to bring light and love to that platform, and TikTok, and here on YouTube.
There we are. Yeah.
Well, thank you everyone for being here. Remembering your truth is your truth. This is a perspective on this show to twist and make you think about things a little bit.
Yeah, just be open to things. You can always push them away, but the worst thing is to being closed off to everything and new ideas and things, because you'll never figure out things if you stay as you are. You can stay as you are, but look at all the other options first. And then decide that where you're at is your best place or something else better. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, thank you everyone for being here, finding blessings, and may you feel loved in yourself. Bye now.
I'll see you next month.